Hi, welcome. I'm excited. The book's really interesting. Uh, Again, I encourage you to read it yourself. You might get even something out of it more than what I am, or different. So I even, like I said, I'll read it more than once, so that way I can get maybe a different perspective on it. I like the quote. Was it? If a man stands in a river, he never stands in the same river, and he's never the same man. I don't know. Probably got that wrong, but that's okay. Today, or actually yesterday, our meditation was may all beings be happy. See, we talked a little bit about the kinesiology and testing, and if you could have a definitive yes or no. Now, it's interesting because some people I've ran into aren't big fans of it. And then also, I didn't touch on much as the book's title, Power versus Force. Okay, so on the map of consciousness, which here, let's bring that up right now. Boom. There we go. I figured it out. Yeah. Anyway, so on the map of consciousness, if you look, we have the courage, and it's kind of a yellow, and then an orange, and then a red, and everything below that would be power, and everything, or sorry, I'd say that everything below that would be force, and everything above that would be power. And so what it is if power ever goes against force, power always wins. Force. One example they gave was the British military versus Gandhi. I don't know the story super well, just kind of probably the general story that most people know is Gandhi was a spiritual leader, and he stood up to, I found our meditation, and he stood up to British military and for India. I have to do more on that story myself. I don't remember it or know it very well. But anyway, so Gandhi was working up in the uppers. Whoop, this way. Nope. Over here. There, he was working up here in the uppers, so he was using power, where the military was using force. See if I get this right. Nope. Still over here. They were down in this little section over here. That's the title of the book, is Power versus Force. And so whenever they go up against each other, power's always going to win over force. That's why they say you can never force anybody to do anything. I can send my kids to school, but I can't force them to work. I gotta get them to want to. Alright, so here is our card, and I think this is very appropriate. I am the universe. Yeah, I like that. I am the universe. There you go, that's not too bad. Ah, aham, brahmasmi. Aham, brahmasmi. Aham, brahmasmi. Brahmasmi. Aham brahmasmi. I am the universe. It's pretty cool. Alright. I'll look this weapon up in the book. So yeah, I did not mention that as far as in Power versus Force, what or why, but that's why the title comes from, is, and then it actually is determinant in human behavior, and then that's we're getting into that more, I guess, but that's also the side. That's these over here. And so if anger is at 150, it's a certain energy, or again, frequency, if you will. And so you can see it, then it can be predictable, or to some degree maybe. So anyway, okay. Aham brahmasmi. Aham brahmasmi. Okay. I am the universe. I am all creation. I am the embodiment of God. Aham means I am, and brahmasmi refers to the pure existence. The core of my being is the ultimate reality, the root and ground of the universe, the source of all that exists. Chanting this mantra brings us back to the truth of who we are and the totality of our potential. We know we are gods and worthy of all love and blessings that the universe has for us. The universe truly does conspire to help us. There is no need to understand what's happening because everything happens within first before it is manifested outwardly. We can step back and watch our lives unfold, taking the next step that is set before us, asking the question, what is my life trying to tell me right now? Stepping into the newest that each day brings, feeling the oneness of all creation, denying the confinement of the body and mind, and allowing the expansiveness of all good to be around us. And that's interesting because, again, even with this book, Power versus Force, they talk about that too. They talk about it being within rather than without, but it's the perception that it's without. Or it's, I guess it's just the way we're perceiving that it's without when it's not. Just the way that this world is set up, I guess. Anyway. Aham brahmasmi. Aham brahmasmi. Aham brahmasmi. Brahmasmi. Aham 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 brahmasmi. That's kind of cool. I like that card. I mean, it does pertain to Anchor of the Universe, obviously, but and that is kind of even the idea of Anchor of the Universe, is that we are the universe. And I guess this is the anchor, my body. Or vice versa, in a sense. I have an anchor into the universe. I can get more into that too. But anyway. Yeah, I'll take a moment. With this card, I'm thinking maybe I had it backwards. So I was thinking that I have an anchor into the universe, and so therefore, at some level, I have, and maybe that's that connection to the collective consciousness. And so I'm saying with Anchor of the Universe that you are anchored into this collective consciousness in a sense, and we're anchored into that. And then, when we're having problems in life or when we need a certain information, you'd call it maybe a muse or, downloading and, however you look at that, but sometimes you just get those ideas or, you thinking about a problem and then the solution or answer kind of comes to you and you go, oh yeah, okay, cool. But now maybe with this card, I'm thinking that with the whole universe anchored down into this body, distilled into this physical form, if you will. Kind of like that one too. I don't know which it is. I'll let you pick which one you like, and I just know the name Anchor of the Universe kind of gives you the right idea, the right feeling of what I'm going for. There's this connection, whatever it is, however you want to describe it, it fascinates me. I'm going to get into this probably a little bit more later on. I've read other books where they talk about miracle healing, or actually I did talk about this, where a man was performing surgeries with like a Swiss Army pocket knife. I'll get more into that. I don't want to get into that too much, but it's just, you hear these stories and maybe they're not real. I don't know. I try to take them with a grain of salt, but it still just fascinates me. And then even over here with this map of consciousness and my own experience with it, it's powerful. It's crazy. It's awesome. With that, we'll actually move into Power versus Force because I was reading this and I thought it was interesting. Now, again, I don't know how much these numbers have changed from when the book was written in 1995, but it says 2.6% of the population test abnormally to kinesiology, and that they go weak to positive and vice versa, accounting for 72% of society problems. So that's interesting too. Just the fact that people test Well, I knew they test differently because I would, again, as I've said before, I imagine it's depending on where they're at on the scale. So if I can figure out how to get my thumb working right. So if we're over here in these lower three, but then we move up to these yellowy three, courage, pride, and anger, then I knew that you would test differently because you're at a higher state, which is interesting. But it's really interesting that people have a abnormal or reverse effect. Now, I have, and again, I talked about this, getting false positives or false negatives. So a false positive, obviously, is when it's a no and you get a yes, and a false negative is when it's a yes and you get a no. That some people, it's almost as if the wires are switched or crossed, and so, when you're supposed to get a yes, you get a no, and so that's interesting. I'm still reading the book. I'll still get further into it. Maybe it has said and I didn't catch it. Now, another thing that it was saying is that a person level of consciousness is, now let me rephrase this. Person's consciousness level is already affected at birth. The other day I showed you this picture. It's my Kirlian photography photo of me. So I showed you this picture. Well, from what I've heard, when they take pictures of that with pregnant women, they can actually see the energy field of the baby, when the cells are still just barely starting to reproduce and no real form, or I would say consciousness. So, well, that's the thing. Now, maybe there is this consciousness here because there's this energy, which again, these cameras are capturing it. There's this energy field around there, and they're saying that energy field, or that your level of consciousness, is there at birth. Now, it does say it is possible to move up in consciousness or even down. Most people, it says, won't. Most people will move probably 5 points in their lifetime. But even moving 1 point is so significant. It's, because we're thinking of, like even say 20, that you still got 20.00. So, if you're moving up 1 whole point, that's pretty big. Or at least from what the book's saying, that's huge. Now, there are different ways to move up from what it's saying. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. With the kinesiology that some people will test adversely to it. In my practice, I wouldn't say I've ran into that particularly. Now, doing, and I called it the feet check. It's actually a leg check, but doing that, the leg check in B.E.S.T. Now, I have had it to where normally this is a yes, and what's normal becomes the no, and what's normally the no becomes a yes in a sense. So I have seen that switch. I guess as myself, I didn't pay too much attention to it. I just thought, their energy's off balanced, and we'll help get them balanced and back into the parasympathetic nervous system. Started getting more into this book, and it talks about how the consciousness first can be measured with this. Okay, so we can, and again, I talked about a list, and they were calibrating the list to see how true it is. So that alone, I'm astonished by. It blows me away. Now, this again, they go into what if you had a definite yes or no answer. What if, even to the bigger questions in life. That's awesome. That's wow. Like again, if you're talking about the election, or if you're talking about just what's a good investment for your savings or whatnot, maybe not savings, but anyway, you can muscle test on this. Now, again, you can get false positives and false negatives. One of the big things that I've talked about before is how you word this. That is definitely crucial. Now, I talked about my family member doing a muscle test, saying, "Is this a safe move for me during a board game?" and they were out the next turn. So again, wording this is definitely key. Play with this at your own risk. I encourage you to play with this. Even try it with a friend or with yourself. We can find out whatever we want, in a sense, through this muscle testing. Great. Now we start to find out, okay, well, one, there can be abnormalities, or people that just test reversely. We can get false positives, false negatives. How do we avoid all that? That sounds like a lot. Now, the book hasn't got into that yet, but basically trial and errors, for what I understand. So if you ask this question and you get a yes, maybe ask the question a little bit differently. Oh, hello. Somebody's come into the chat. Welcome to the channel. We're talking about the book Power versus Force, and in that book they have this level of consciousness that he's, I want to say, pioneered with kinesiology. Now, again, he didn't necessarily pioneer kinesiology, or I should say applied kinesiology, because kinesiology is the muscle movement. Anyway, with this book, Power versus Force, they go on and they talk about using applied kinesiology to muscle test this list over here, finding out where you can sit. Let me go back to my notes. Again, I did say it's not common for somebody to move a whole level. So if you're at anger, to go up to pride, I guess, but that's 25 points. It doesn't seem, I guess they're roughly all. Doesn't seem like much. Anyway, let me get back to this. It is possible for somebody to jump 100 points, though, it says in the book, and that's through strict dedication. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to go be a spiritual teacher, but as long as you dedicate to improving yourself, and to me, that's really what this is about, is making myself better than I was yesterday. It says you can jump up to 100 points. Most people only move about 5 points in their lifetime, but it depends. And then it also, again, I said 1 point can vary somebody's lifetime significantly from what the book's saying. Now, this is something that I thought was really interesting, because, again, we're talking about power up here, these ones, and then versus these ones down here, force. So one of the things that it says with drugs and drug addiction is it's not necessarily the drug that's giving you the euphoria feeling. What it is the drug is filtering out these low vibrations over here. So if I'm understanding this right, again, encourage you to read it yourself. Maybe I'm not, but this is how I get it. So if you're over here and you're in, say, fear, and you I guess get drunk or use mind altering drugs. So what those drugs do is they are going to come over here, and I can't do this actually because the screen's on top. Anyway, so courage, if you're, say, again, at fear, you use drugs, now it's going to hide or mask, in a sense, like a filter. It's going to block out, you get window tint on your car because it blocks out certain of the sunlight. Now, they're saying when you use these drugs, it's just like that. It's a filter that's blocking these other lower vibrations from coming in, and then you're feeling these higher vibrations up here, and that's the euphoria feeling that you're getting from this drug. It's not the drug itself. Now, I know, or I should say I know from what I've studied and understand with science, they talk about it's the endorphins and the dopamines and all that, fun stuff, which I don't know too much about that. But anyway, because it's saying that it's blocking out these lower vibrations so that way you feel the higher vibrations, and that's really what's doing it. Now, I don't know. But it's fascinating. It's crazy. I'm like, okay, well, I want to find out more about this. Yeah, wow. If that is the case, and people, say, using drugs. And again, the book even does mention a little bit of LSD and things like that. And it didn't say whether people actually were able to move their consciousness up, or as far as I've gotten in the book, it hasn't. Or if they've just used that in an attempt to move their consciousness up. Now, how that works differently from, alcohol, marijuana, any of that stuff, I'm not sure. So, in a nutshell, if I understand this, it's saying that these lower vibrations are filtered out. Now, maybe fear, and this is, to me, this is how it sounds. So fear would be where your natural state is. You get drunk and you move up to courage, that liquid courage, as they call it. And this is, again, kind of how I see things, or how I'm understanding it. So, you go from fear to courage. That's what alcohol will do to you, in a sense. But then let's say you use something else, I don't know, acid maybe, or maybe that's a bit extreme. Maybe you'd get it from cocaine or heroin or something else. I'm not sure. But then that moves you clear up here into love, and and maybe that's that ecstasy. They say everybody in ecstasy loves everybody, and you're always touchy feely, like and maybe that's it. Is different drugs filter differently, just like different filters. I mean, you have a coffee filter that you wouldn't use for your air conditioned filter. So, I don't know. I'm reading this. I'm bringing you some of this information that I'm finding out, and the way that I'm understanding it. Again, I encourage you to look into this, to check it out yourself. It's nutty. It's crazy to me. Like, yeah. Anyway, so back to what I was saying: power versus force. It's the positive, or the power energies, in a sense, versus the forceful or negative energies. It does say that most people live in the negative energies, and there's a few yogis, I guess, or masters, gurus, I'm not sure the exact terminology, that counterbalance the rest of us. And so if you looked at it as like a scale, I know my hand's not the best scale, there's one or two people on this side, and everybody's over here on this side, but it's still balanced. And it's because these are so much more powerful than these. And so it takes less to balance it out. Offhand reading it, the Dalai Lama came to mind. It was, you have these certain spiritual teachers, or say enlightened individuals, and they kind of counterbalance the rest of us that live in grief and fear and anger, pride, courage, all that kind of stuff. That's what it's saying. Now, it is really interesting, and it did get into more of the overall population and where they live at. Now, I want to say it was around pride to courage, but I could be wrong on that. I'd have to look more into it. I'll continue to read it, which obviously I'll look more into it. But it was just kind of crazy because, again, I've studied the Kirlian photography, and they talk about pictures of babies in the womb and, first conception, pretty much, or within a couple weeks old. There's a distinct aura field that is uniquely the baby's there. And then they're talking about the consciousness, again, separately. This is the book now. I mean, talking about how you're born with your level of consciousness. And to me, again, call it coincidence, call it what you want. There's a lot of things that kind of, I guess, just adding up. And I go, wow, all right, this is kind of cool. Something to this. Look into this yourself. Find out what you can. I mean, another thing even that I was learning about this, I go back, I think it was Monday or Tuesday we were talking about this. So just the other day, Dr. Diamond and Dr. Goodhart, and how when I first read this book, I understood it that Dr. David Hawkins was the one that was pioneering the kinesiology, but he's actually just picking it up from these other ones and moving forward with it. Again, I say kinesiology, it's applied kinesiology. There is a difference between kinesiology and applied kinesiology. Kinesiology is just the study of muscles and movements. Applied kinesiology is this muscle testing, this innate intelligence that we're trying to tap into to get our yes or no answers. The trick still seems to be with how to get that yes or no. Again, asking a proper question. I thought it was interesting. They said even something as simple as somebody's perfume, the wrong smell in the room, can give you adverse or false negatives, false positives. And so definitely got to be careful with this. I'm not going out and saying you solve your financial future with this. The book doesn't claim that either, as far as I understand. They just say it may be a possibility if we continue down this rabbit hole further. Now, I have even heard with what body language I've studied. I've read a couple books on body language. I've studied a little bit of it. But even with body language, one of the really interesting things that they were talking about is technically, or maybe not technically, I don't know, you can't hide anything. So somebody who is a really good body reader, they could misread it. Like if you have your arms crossed, a lot of people say you're reserved, or your arms are crossed, your legs are crossed, you're closed off. Well, that could also mean you're cold. So, but then they also look at, from what I understand, feet to eyes to all this other stuff, and then it compiles a picture to better understand. But again, they say you can't hide anything. And I think that's really interesting, because that's kind of what this book is saying too, is that we already kind of know. You have that time where you knew something and you don't know how you knew it. You had that gut feeling, that intuition. That's kind of what we're touching on here and going to, and it's it's crazy awesome to me. Wow. So I'm so glad that you're here and you're joining me. It looks like I am running out of time, so I'm going to sign off. I hope you join me tomorrow, and yeah, I had an awesome time. Thank you. I'll continue to read more and bring you some wonderful information tomorrow. Thanks again. See ya.